Welcome back. We're going to continue with the Great War. In our first lecture, we talked about context and significance. We talked about some of the long-term causes, and we're going to continue with those now. The next long-term cause I want to mention is Austria Hungary's nationality problem. And you can look at the map here and see that this is just a remarkable hodgepodge of different language groups. You can see Germans and Magyars are Hungarians. You can see the Italians and Poles and Czechs and Slovaks and Russians and Romanians and on and on and on. Can you imagine trying to govern such a place? What language are the street signs going to be in? What language are the textbooks going to be in? So Austria-Hungary's nationality problem is pertinent to our discussion because if you'll notice, just south of Austria-Hungary is Serbia, our little Slavic-speaking villain for this piece. Serbia has ambitions to expand in the Balkans, and she would like to include those Slavic people who live in Austria-Hungary, one of those many language groups that we just mentioned. So we'll get back to this when we talk about Serbia. But I want you to keep this visual image of Austria-Hungary in your mind. Just imagine if one of these groups, be it Italians or Russians or whoever, if one of these groups were to leave the empire, that would provide a very dangerous example to the rest of them. You could imagine Austria-Hungary flying apart as its different ethnicities and its different language groups desire their own sovereignty, their own nation. Next long-term cause, the alliance system. And you can look at the map here and see the two alliances that are going to fight this war. The Central Powers, and you can see why they're named that. They run across the center of Europe. You have the German Empire, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and the Ottoman Empire. And in opposition to the Central Powers, you have the Triple Entente, or as many times we simply call them the Allies. Entente, French for friendship. And I'm only going to talk about three here, Great Britain, France, and Russia. Now look at Russia and France first. I believe in 1892 the Russians and the French sign a military pact to come to the other's aid if they are attacked. If you back away from this a bit and think about it, it seems like a very odd marriage, doesn't it? Here you have France, one of the most modern countries in the world, a parliamentary democracy, modern communications, modern industry, a very liberal, open society for the most part. And you have Russia, probably the most backward state in Europe, a police state governed by the Tsar and his ministers. What in the world would bring these two countries, as different as they could possibly be, what could bring them together in a military alliance? Well, look who lies between them, the German Empire. Mutual fear of Germany, Germany's intentions and potential are going to draw France and Russia together. What's the old cliche? Politics makes strange bedfellows? Indeed. Now look at Great Britain. You'll see that Britain's a late joiner to the Allies. The British and the French had a very troublesome relationship, very difficult history, one full of bloodshed. You can go all the way back to the 100 Years' War, where the British kings were seeking to claim their feudal holdings in France. You can think of the French and Indian War, or the 7 Years' War as they call it in Europe. Again, Britain and France in opposition. The American Revolution, Britain and France in opposition. And then the long wars of the French Revolution, and then the Napoleonic Wars. Again, Britain and France at each other's throats. So we have this long history of bitterness and bloodshed, yet Great Britain is going to join France and Russia in the Triple Entente. Why? Again, fear of Germany, which leads us to our next long-term cause, and that is let's call it the Germany's new course. Bismarck, of course, is long dead, and Kaiser Wilhelm II is now the Emperor of Germany. And I like to think of the Kaiser as kind of a 12-year-old boy, at least mentally speaking, in a man's body. Mischievous, impulsive, kind of reckless. What somebody call him, a saber rattler, as if he's about to draw his sword all the time. He constantly sort of sticks Germany's nose into places where it doesn't belong, and he makes people anxious. We don't know what his intentions are. What is he going to do next? The Kaiser sees across the North Sea that Great Britain has the world's greatest navy, and he wants one too. I can picture the Kaiser in his bathtub sinking ships and stuff, playing army or playing navy. He begins to build a battleship navy right there in full view of the British. And of course, this is alarming. The British say, well, Germany already has the largest and the best army in Europe. Why do they need a navy? Do they intend to challenge us? So Germany's new course, the Kaiser's sort of provocative behavior, is going to draw Great Britain into this triple entente. So here we have the two alliance systems with obligations to come to your allies' defense in case of trouble. Now, since we're talking about Great Britain and France, I want you to look at the small country of Belgium. They're on the English Channel, and this is our next cause. Belgium, of course, created after the Napoleonic Wars. The British wanted a place in northwestern Europe so that if they ever had to bring their army back to Europe, as they had in those long wars against Napoleon, that they'd have a safe, neutral place to do so. And of course, Belgium is as close as you can get to Great Britain. It's the narrowest point of the English Channel there. And the British guaranteed Belgium's security, so that if France or Germany harass or attack Belgium, they're going to have to answer to the British. So keep this in mind, that Belgium is, her security is guaranteed by Great Britain. Now, next long-term cause, and it follows directly on what we're just discussing. We talked about the alliance system, and you can see plainly that if Germany gets involved in a conflict with France, Russia is going to attack her from the east. Or if Germany gets involved in a conflict with Russia, she will be attacked in the west by France. So Germany's, sort of a pecan and a nutcracker here. Now, the German General Staff work out a plan. It's called the Schlieffen Plan. General Alfred von Schlieffen devised this and spent quite a bit of time working out the most minute details. We can't get into that here. Schlieffen's plan calls for about 9/10 of the German armed forces to be arrayed on the Western Front to carry out a gigantic flanking or sweeping movement through the Low Countries, through Belgium, sweeping into France, enveloping Paris, capturing the capital, and then pinning the French armies against the German-French frontier. This was von Schlieffen's baby. This was something that he nurtured, and we'll see it put into action in 1914. Now, notice that the German armies, to carry out this plan, are going to have to cross Belgium. And you can imagine the British response to this. So keep that in mind. Also, I want to mention one more thing about von Schlieffen. He said that Germany had two enemies, France and Russia. He said France was by far the most dangerous, that France could mobilize her armies quickly. They were already on the frontier with Germany, that France had modern communications and modern transportation systems, and that the Schlieffen Plan was designed to win for Germany a two-front war, a war against France and Russia at the same time. Von Schlieffen said that we will sweep through the Low Countries, crush France in a month or 6 weeks. And then we'll take all those German troops, victorious in France, put them on trains and take them back to the Eastern Front and crush the Russians. Von Schlieffen said that the Russians will take a very long time to mobilize, It'll take them a long time to get their troops and their animals and their supplies and food and water, to get all this this war-making machine to the frontier. He said, in that time, we can crush France and then take care of the Russians. So you can sort of see where this tragedy is headed when you start thinking about all these long-term causes. A couple more that I want to mention. I want to say something here about Serbia's ambitions. Serbia, a small Slavic-speaking country in the Balkans, wants to create a great Slavic nation there. It wants to incorporate Bosnia just to the west. Wants to incorporate the Slavs that live in Austria Hungary, and to create a Yugoslavia, a great southern Slavic state. So Serbia's ambitions are putting Austria Hungary at risk. And then finally, our last long-term cause, and again, we're staying in the Balkans. You can look at the map here and see the decline of the Ottoman Empire. The Ottomans had penetrated the Balkans many centuries before. They had knocked at the gates of Vienna in the Middle Ages. By 1914, Ottoman power has diminished severely. In fact, Ottoman power is retracting or shrinking away from Europe and receding back into what today we call Turkey. This leaves a political vacuum, and Serbia wants to fill it. As Ottoman power recedes, Serbian ambitions grow, and like I said, Serbia wants to create a great Slavic state, and this is her opportunity as Ottoman power withdraws from Europe. All right, let's stop there, and we'll talk about short-term causes next time.